Hello, guys, and welcome to our YouTube channel where we talk about the CloudBlue Connect platform. So here, myself, Max, and Mark is with me, and we wanted to discuss extension as a service or DevOps module today. We will try to do it as fast as possible because the topic is quite complex. But nevertheless, we believe it's very interesting. So first of all, what is DevOps module? And as you probably know by now, when working with our platform is very focused on integrations with different platforms. So this layer of integration of our platform with external systems is very important and plays a huge role in what we do. And essentially, when we think about this integration module or this integration layer, as of right now, right, we have our APIs and user interfaces on the side of the platform, and our platform has to be integrated with all those external systems, whether on the vendor side or on the distributor side, which technically speaking means that in middleware needs to be developed in order to translate API calls from one system to another and business processes between those two systems. In our world, we call that middleware an extension, right? And that extension typically would be developed using our SDK or sometimes using our API calls directly, and it will be developed by a developer, right? In this diagram, we call this developer system integrator, which might be a scenario in some cases, but maybe for the sake of more generic approach, we can call this actor a developer, right? And well, what do we know about this developer? That they have to develop this extension, and until we introduced this module, this extension had to be operated in a custom environment, meaning our platform didn't provide any assistance or any help to those people, right? So you should have operated this extension yourself. You should have kind of managed this extension yourself without any help from our platform. Now, with this new module, and with this new module that we call DevOps or extension as a service, we try to cover this problem or try to help these developers by introducing a standardized operational environment within the platform, right? So still, obviously, developers have to create this extension, this middleware, but they don't have to worry about the place to run that extension and how to monitor and how to make sure that logs are available to everyone and how to scale this solution. So all of that could be taken care of by DevOps module as long as this module is used by this developer in order to create an extension. Right, that's the whole idea. So obviously, it's still possible to develop extensions the same way, right? As long as it's operated somewhere else. But with this module now, developers have an option to run it in our module. And this module covers basic scenarios that might be required by everyone. Things like environments, right? Development, staging, production, and propagation between those, monitoring, deployment, right? How do you develop locally? How do you manage deployment from your version control? So all those quite basic things that you would expect from this kind of a module, right? For example, how do you even bootstrap this project? And this is what we wanted to demonstrate to you today, what Mark will show in a live demo in a few seconds, right? And well, user interface of this module probably you already saw in the platform as you work with it, and this is where you can see all those stats for consumption, for login, etc. Again, I don't want to spend too much time with slides because this is where essentially we wanted to do a live demo and this discussion together with Marc. And in this demo scenario, Marc will go through like basically like the following flow. We will have a product which is not automatically provisioned yet, which we will assume is being manually provisioned. And we will use this new module of ours, this DevOps module, in order to bootstrap a project for automated provisioning, and we will show how it works end to end. Right. With this, let me hand over to Marc. And well, Marc, I'm happy to be recording this demo with you.
Thank you, Max. Thanks for the introductions and for putting us in the scope of what DevOps module is. Okay, let me start sharing my screen. As you mentioned it, let's imagine the use case where, first of all, we have a product that we would like to automate. I mean, I have plenty of products, but let's create a new one in order to be able to focus on this one for this exercise. Okay, I will be creating our product. I don't know, it may be a product which offers a nice service, which will be Monsters as a service, to say something. Okay, I have plenty of distributors, then I need to provide what is the category that this product will match for them. Okay, and once I have it, I create the product. In this simplistic exercise, at the end, let's imagine that I have manual fulfillment, that it's what I had been doing till now. And in my manual fulfillment, basically what I had been doing, it's providing some value to some parameter. I don't know, maybe I need to copy all the data from the customer into my service itself, and I need to return to the distributor, for example, some couple of strings, a username and a password or something like that. Then I will put a couple of parameters that will be single line of text, for example. That will be fulfillment, of course, in the scope of a certain subscription. Okay, and let's put a nice title for it. I don't know, service username. The username to access. And why not, I don't know, the first or the initial password. Initial password. In other words, every time that I will receive an order, what I was doing till now, it was going to my real system, copying the data into my system, and as a return, I was getting a username, a password that I had to put into the order in order to send it back to the distributor. That's something
it's typical swivel chair, right? So basically we receive an order, we just go to our system, we get some values, we sort back manually. Okay.
Exactly. That allowed us to go into market pretty fast, but of course at certain moment on time, it makes sense to start automating. And maybe I have an API, or maybe I have, I don't know, maybe I can even inject it into the service database directly. In other words, I can imagine or I can invent some sort of automation to go away from the swivel chair, right? Then, well, we have created this basic product. Maybe it makes sense to put a simplistic icon to make it look a little bit better for our exercise. And we create the product. Okay, we need to create the version. Awesome. Now, as our audience knows, I can start, for example, running previews in order to create requests as a vendor. In other words, as the person who handles this to test my product. Or in the case that I do a listing with a distributor, I can start receiving test transactions or production transactions. But well, for our simplistic example, we will focus on the vendor side of the story, and we will be working with previews. Okay, let's start the automation. As you well explained it, DevOps module or extension as a service module allows to run these automations side by side with our platform. But for development, of course, we will not be using the cloud and we will be using a local environment just because it's way more comfortable for the developer, right? In order to do this, we will be using our CLI tool to bootstrap the project. And in order to connect it, we will require a token. Okay, I have in my account plenty of tokens. And in fact, I added one of these tokens directly into my CLI. This means that if I downloaded the CLI, I can...
Is it possible to zoom it a little bit, just to make it easier to see?
I hope that it's more visible now.
Yeah. It's nice.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then I added this account into the list of accounts that I can manage. As you can see, I have this vendor added to the CLI account, which in fact it's the same that I'm handling over the portal. This means that it's connected by using one of these tokens. And during our development, we will be using such token in order to work. When we will move into production, and this means that it runs side by side with our platform, the solution, the DevOps module, will create a special token that can only be used by DevOps module. Okay? That's the only real difference that we may face between the two environments, that one handles the credentials by itself, while when we're developing and running locally, I need to do that by myself. Okay, without more distraction, let's start what is our project or to accomplish our goal, which is the automation of the fulfillment of our product. I go to the DevOps module, and as a vendor, the first thing that I need to do is add a service. And we say that we wanted to create it for Monster as a service product. Then my service may be called the same way. I can put certain description. And in the next step, I can select for which product I want to create such automation. In our case, it was for this Monster as a service product. Okay, I press Add. And here we are. Now the system has created a service. And a service, in the use case of the scope of a product, it's composed of 3 different environments. This means that I can have 3 different code bases running side by side. And each of such code bases will be responsible of different type of transactions. Development ones, which are the ones which the vendor can generate by himself to test or to develop. Testing ones, which are initiated by distributors, and means it's a test from such a distributor. It's not a real commercial transaction. And the production ones, in other words, the ones that really matters, which at the end, it's a real commercial transaction between a distributor and a vendor. We will be working on local. Okay, let's press open just to have it here. And in a glance, let me provide you about a short description of the widgets that we see, just because I will be start jumping from one place to the other, and it's good that we remain a little bit what it is. From one side, we have the environment widget, which explains us in which mode we are running. At this moment on time, we will be running local. In other words, I will be running the extension directly from my laptop. We can switch to the cloud, but we will leave that as another part of our explanation. At this moment in time, it's not initialized. We never did a transaction. Never this extension had been connected. While developing locally, we will need a mechanism to authenticate or identify this environment in the system. And that's done by this instance or environment ID, which is being provided to us only in the local environment. When it's running on the cloud, this data, it's not used at all. Additionally, and just because I will be using in the scope of our explanation, we can have environment variables. At the end, an extension, it's a piece of code which should be able to get the configuration in order to run somehow dynamically, injected to it, but not be hard-coded directly in the code. People who had been working with solutions like, for example, Kubernetes or many others, knows that using environment variables, it's a good way to contextualize or to pass data which is not fixed to our code, and also be able to handle its life cycle, updating it and so on. Which kind of data? Well, data which is pure configuration. It does not have a direct implication on the business side, but it uses it for being able to process. For example, in my example, what I will do is use one of these environment variables to say which template ID we must use in order to approve our requests. It's something that I can hard code, but it will be nicer if it can be updated dynamically, right?
And would you suggest to like in real life to store credentials there, for example, because you will most likely use token and API information to access to your service? Would you recommend to store it here or like somewhere else, Mark?
In fact, it's a great question. When we are talking also about credentials, also behind that, there is some operational component of this, like as you may imagine, rotating credentials, passwords, and so on. Here we are providing a mechanism where people can use in order to store such data, okay? And even it can be done in a secure way. It means that when we will add an environment variable, we choose if this one is plain text and it can be seen by everybody, or it's secured. And this means that only the extension can get access to such data. Then it's an easy way for operations, for example, to update it and handle it, just because will not require redeployments or reconfigurations. That's the good thing about it. Plus security just by the fact that it's encrypted. Then yes, indeed, it's the best place where you can put these kind of things, or one of the best place.
Okay.
Maybe you can invent other mechanisms.
Yeah, either you like I would use my own like key management somewhere, right, and stuff, or kind of I use this just as a quick and but still safe solution. Okay,
Exactly.
makes sense. Thank you.
Exactly. All the DevOps environment at the end, it's about tasks, which gets generated on top of certain objects. In our case, it will be on top of fulfillment requests. And these tasks should be monitored and so on. Then we will be able to see all the different tasks, what happened with the tasks on the task widget. I will not be talking about it now, but it's possible with the DevOps module also to schedule actions and make parts of my code to be executed periodically, for example, or one time, in order to be able to execute certain pieces of our extension, which does not have any direct relationship with the fact of events coming from the Connect platform. Okay, and the last widget, since it will be part of our bootstrapping of our project, are what are the capabilities of this extension. Extension as a service allows you to cover a lot of aspects, from ones related with subscriptions, like as we said, requests, okay, and multiple types of requests, the same for tier configurations, and how the life cycle of tier configurations are, even about products or listings, or even going more deep in integration tier accounts, for example, to synchronize customers' data when it's changed at the distributor side, or even usage files lifecycle. These capabilities, it's what we can add in our extension. Then just provided here in a glance, just in order to be able to move forward. Okay, let's start then. I will take our environment ID and I will copy it just in order to be able to move a little bit faster. And I will go back to our CLI. The CLI has a lot of capabilities, in fact, or multiple functionalities. We can learn about them using the help command, okay? And we can handle from here products, we can handle from here accounts, customers, even to export data or even to execute reports, etc. In our case, we are using the CLI as an initial step of our SDK. And this means that I will be, yes?
Mark, I just wanted to make sure, like, what is the right way of installing it? Because you already had it in this environment, but if I want to play with this, then how do I install it?
Once again, good question. If I invite you to go to our GitHub, where all the different explanations on how to install it are detailed. The CLI, it's based on it's a Python tool, but we have different type of distributives which may suit your needs. The most simple one for people who is deep in Python, it's to use pip. Then just with a simple pip command, you can get the CLI tool. But we offer also different distributives, including Docker, which can also be used on different platforms when you have Docker installed. And we have specific ones for certain operating systems, like, for example, Mac OS X using Brew. We also have a Windows installer and as well as Linux one. Then pretty simplistic, either you need to issue one command in order to do it with pip, either over Docker, over Brew, or in the case, for example, of Windows, just download an NCI, double click, and gets installed.
Awesome. Okay, makes sense. So we have this tool, and now we work with it. Okay.
Yep. Then let's start. And in order to start, I need to bootstrap my project. In order to do it, I can use the CCLI command. I will do the command project. Just to remember it, we have two types of projects which can be bootstrapped using the CLI. One is a report project, but in our case, it's an extension one.
That should be a good topic for a different conversation video about reports. Yes, need to remember
Absolutely. That. Absolutely. And just because I'm using the help command all the time, and to remember it inside the fact of using Bootstrap.
Hay alguien en el dispositivo interfono. El micrófono está desactivado.
Due to the fact, apologize for that. Due to the fact that I'm doing an extension, I can also have subcommands. The one that we will be using is the Bootstrap one, but we also can update our extension in the case that we release new versions of the collateral libraries which are provided by Connectim. You can just update everything by the bum command, or even a validate command, which checks that what you have done in the extension will work even before moving to, let's say, a production environment or really testing that in the cloud. Okay, let's go for the Bootstrap. And let's start with it. As you can see, it appears a wizard with multiple steps. Most of these steps will be pretty simplistic, just in order to explain in advance what we want to support, okay? But it will not take us much. Okay, we need to put some name to our project, okay? And it will be, I don't know, Monster as a Service, as we had the product name. Where we want to store it, which sort of folder needs to be created on our local hard disk, which will contain this project. It's okay, the suggestion of the CLI. We can have a description, introduce it. This kind of data, it's used mainly due to the fact that, you know, you can even integrate extension as a service with, for example, GitHub, and have GitHub actions and have public information. Then we would bootstrap the project in a way which can be consumed as a normal project, so software project. Then that's why a description is provided. It's asking us for the name of the package. We maybe did not say that it before, but extension as a service requires some knowledge of Python, because it's the language that we are providing support on in order to develop such extensions and run it on our site. Then we need to expose how it should be the name of the module, Python module, that this extension implements. We call it Connect Extension, for example. Okay, now a lot of developers may get excited, maybe not, it depends. But our SDK and the different libraries that we provide supports synchronous and asynchronous programming. That's something that the developer may choose, but there is a small warning on that. As you properly said, Max, the end, these extensions are, at least we are talking with two systems. One, it's Connect by itself, and then we have the external system. And maybe to talk with this external system, we are also using libraries. When you are coding, either you are using everything synchronous or everything asynchronous, and you cannot mix, right? In general terms. Then please take into consideration when you want to do it or want to do an extension that you choose, not only based on how we work in the Connect side, but with what you are integrating. Maybe it will be easier if you do it because you can reuse libraries and do it synchronous, or maybe such libraries are asynchronous, and then you want to.
And how would you suggest to choose here, Mark? Like for those who are new to those like asynchronous environments, is it safer to start with synchronous and then just to transition to asynchronous when you need to get what, like more performance or more scalability? What is the criteria that people should use to switch to async IO?
Basically, I will say that first of all, it's about the libraries that you are using. If they have or does not have asynchronous support in general terms, because at the end we are trying to save the time. It's true that especially when we are working on this kind of integrations, everything is about I/O because we are working outside, right? Then asynchronous may be a little bit faster in order to take or retake. Anyway, when we are running on the cloud, these extensions are multi-thread by nature. And this means that one single container which runs our code can process multiple requests concurrently. Then, and typically, we are running up to 30 threads concurrent. If we consider this amount and how much time it takes to provision a request, we can see that it really does not matter in terms of performance for simple reason. If you calculate, you will see that you can provision with a single instance hundreds of thousands of requests per day. Then, well, making such selection just due performance, I don't think it's that important.
Okay, then we keep it kind of as without, I think, by default. Okay, makes sense.
Yep. Okay, who is the author of this extension? It will be me in that case. The version, we can work with versioning. For example, we will work on the version 1.0 to say something. License. We are being asked for the license because a lot of these extensions, or potentially a lot of these extensions, may be published, for example, on a public repository like GitHub. Okay, then it's good to have this licensing. Additionally, we put here licenses which allows us to run on behalf of the creator in our own cloud, right? Then we put compatible licenses. Of course, if you run by yourself, you can modify the project later on and put the license that you believe that it's right. Okay, a lot of people is using GitHub. This is a software project. It makes a lot of sense to think that maybe you want to do things like continuous integration, okay? Then we can already pre-create all the different workflows in order to use GitHub Actions for your CI as a CI tool. Then the tool will be asking us if we want to already pre-create that. I will do it just for fun. Okay. As you see, it already provides an API key. This API key comes from the fact that it's the one that I'm using with my account that I activated on the CLI. Okay, I press next, and now it's when it asks for this environment ID. This environment ID, just to remember it can be obtained directly from our portal, and it's the one that we have here. Each of these different environments will have its own environment ID. This means that I can even run locally something that may answer to production requests using its own environment ID, test ones, or in our case, development ones. Then I take the environment ID, I copy it, and I put it directly in the CLI tool. It asks us for the API hostname of Connect. That's the default one that we have. Then it's okay. And now certain fun appears. We are telling to the CLI tool that bootstraps a project, and we can tell which capabilities or which functionalities we want to support. For example, in this simplistic use case that we are doing, we only want to support our extension handles purchase requests, but we can select each of the different types. In the case that one action that happens in Connect does not match with the capabilities of our extension, we always have the manual flows. And for example, I may be introducing the automation of purchase requests while the rest of the actions keeps being done doing serial share. The same for tier configurations. Now, in our case, our product will not have. Even we can have extensions which knows about listings on top of our product. Custom events, which is when we need to have our code interact from outside system that is not Connect in order to, I don't know, use it as a sort of, not a middleware just between Connect and an external system, but from this external system against Connect. That also can be done.
So custom events are events that originated not from Connect, but rather from those external sources, right? So when a webhook is triggered from that service, and then you want to do something in Connect platform, okay.
Exactly, that will be a valid use case, but we can invent any, indeed. We can support product actions, okay, and then we'll write such code. For tier account requests, if we need to handle real-time validations, for example, for assets, as well as for tier configurations. If we want to handle something related with usage files, for example, to auto-approve usage files after it gets uploaded. And if we want to enable certain examples for schedulables and for variables. For variables, we say that can be done directly in our portal, but the extension may initialize the variables which should be available directly from the code. Then, if we think about it, extension also can help on the operational environment, especially thinking about upgrades and so on, just to populate data on initialization. In that case, I will not be using that. Okay, we get certain summary about everything that we selected, and we can press create. We get that done. Okay, certain explanation. Since I increased the font size, it became maybe a little bit too big, but basically it's providing us a set of instructions about what are the next steps that we must follow, where is the documentation, etc., in order to be able to move forward. Something that we will be trying to cover in this explanation. Okay? Any question, Max?
It all sounds, looks reasonable, yes. So basically every time we run this wizard, we go through this wizard, we initialize the project, and from like going forward, then you just work with the source code of this project and modify files and store it under version control, right?
Exactly.
Okay, then I get it. Yes, it makes sense.
Okay, then as you see, it got created in my disk, this Monster as a Service folder that I can open with my favorite IDE. Okay, in my case, I will be using PyCharm in order to start working on this. Okay, PyCharm gets loading. Okay.
Is it a requirement to have PyCharm for this, or it could be any editor?
Any Visual Studio Code. I know people doing that with Sublime, text editors, whatever. I mean, I just use it at PyCharm because it's my favorite tool while writing Python code, but anything can be used. Okay, just as a glance to go a little bit over the different files and folders which gets created after we bootstrap the project, we can see here the GitHub Actions configuration. Okay, this means that if I will be uploading our code to GitHub, it will start a CI process based on a pipeline that we predefined. This pipeline, basically the one that we suggest, it tests, it runs all the testing suite that the extension has. And in fact, we initialize the project providing test case examples, unitary test case examples. Then it's quite useful. Second folder, here is where it will reside everything which is relative to the code of our extension. Basically, it gets initialized what is the Python module, a JSON file, which is a description of parts that we selected in our bootstrap of the project. In our case, we said that we wanted to handle purchase requests. And by default, as we can see, it tells us that we'll support all the different statuses of a purchase request. Maybe we want to reduce the amount of support and we want to remove certain of these statuses. And then our code will not be invoked in such case, okay? If I only want, for example, pending purchase requests, then I will just leave pending. For example, we are a vendor, we don't care when we approve, then I can remove the status approved. Or for example, I don't want to be invoked when failed, scheduled, etc., etc. Then we can play and just tell to the system what we want to support. In my case, I will only support purchase requests in draft mode, pending, and if we want inquiry. In fact, let's make it more real. I am a vendor, then just pending. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Extension py, which is at the end the code that we will write, the concrete code that will be executed when a matching request with what we defined before exists. This is a pretty simplistic process, and we will see it just in a minute from now. Just to finish this fast thing, or fast explanation, we have a test suite which had been created, which uses PyTest in order to be able to test certain scenarios. And the developer will need to extend such testing library or such testing cases according to what he believes. Okay? In order to run our extension, we will be using Docker. And we are providing a Docker Compose file, which allows us to run such extension, either directly like a service, either because we want to run bash on it and maybe launch the commands to make the extension running and so on by hand, and as well a container which allows to run all the tests. Then the bootstrapping of a project already provides us a Docker Compose file to cover the different cases. Also, it takes these containers will get over the environment certain variables in order to be able to connect to our platform. Which ones? The API key, the environment ID, as well as the API endpoint. This is being used in order to initiate a client, an API client, which allows us to connect with the Connect API. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and last but not least, people who is used to write things in Python and to handle different types of libraries, probably they are used to use a tool, which is Poetry, which is a package and library and dependencies manager for Python, where we can define all the different libraries that we may incorporate to our project. By default, we are populating that list with the fact that we require Python newer or equal to 3.8, our own library, which encapsulates the extensions, and for the testing case, a recommendation of the different test tools that could be used. From here, you are totally free to extend the amount of libraries that you use. Okay.
Makes perfect sense to me. Yes. Okay. So how do we run it?
Let's write. First of all, maybe, well, let's just start the extension in order to make it connected to our system. Okay. In other words, to get out from this uninitialized tag that we have here. Okay. I'm refreshing just to show that it's not fake in order to see that it really connects. How to do it? Pretty simple. I can go here to the command line and write Docker compose up and the name of the service that I want to start. Remember that I said that we have 3, and in our case, we want the main service. Then it's called monster as a service _dev. Okay, I run this, and now Docker starts to make the job, right? It's installing the dependencies that we have in our project.
And while this happening, so it's any version of Docker would do, right? So you just go to the website of a Docker and you download it and install it.
Exactly. Just download Docker Desktop because we are doing local development, and you can run the extension. In fact, it already started. It installed everything, as we saw more or less till here, where it says extension installed, and here started to connect to our platform. Okay, and received already certain information from the system, for example, in order to pass the environment variables. Okay, just to show that that's real, I can go back to our UI, I refresh the environment, and we can see that it got connected.
Okay, so it now runs locally, but still the platform would detect it and work with it like the real one. Okay.
Exactly. And if we remember about the capabilities, we said that we want to make an extension that only covers purchase requests in a status pending. And we see that this widget now updated, and it says that it supports one thing for subscriptions. If we press the details, we can see purchase requests in a status pending. It means that our code passed all the capabilities to the platform. And in case that I want to support more things, I just need to modify the JSON file and just delete it. Make sense?
Sounds cool. Yes, makes perfect sense to me.
Okay, then let's move forward. Let's start making it a little bit real and write some code.
Yes, I guess let's not overwhelm it just a little bit, just minor provisioning or something, because I guess people are already tired by now watching this video.
I hope not.
40 minutes.
Hope not, but most probably. Okay, then let's do such a pretty simplistic example where what we want is to, every time that it gets a purchase request, it populates our 2 parameters with a random value and approves the request. Nothing else. That's our goal. In order to operate, people will need to get used to our OpenAPI client. It's a Python library which allows us to operate with Connect API in a pretty simplistic way. All this information is also documented in Read the Docs, okay? And you will see that you can start interacting with the API of Connect in a matter of seconds. Pretty simple, even due to the fact that it's using this Fluent principle, then you can even follow our OpenAPI specification in order to understand how you need to write the different code. Like, for example, if you would like to access the assets collection to know which ones you have, it's as simple as doing something like that, which matches our OpenAPI specification. People who is used to that, it's a GET request into a /subscriptions, /assets. Then I just translated what I said using this Fluent principle here. Then I just get into the subscriptions namespace, the collection assets. Okay, I'm not going too much deep in the OpenAPI client, just in order to be able to move forward in what is our DevOps. Okay, going back to our product, we have two parameters. One has the code parameter A, the other one has parameter B, and we say that we want to get a random value for that. Then I go to the extension.py. Here, then let's do something like import random. It will be a string, then random string. Okay, that's the function that gets called when a new request that matches our criteria that we said before gets invoked and gets as a parameter a request. In other words, the JSON representation of what is a request in the way that it's expressed in our OpenAPI specification. And then I only need to do and write the code below. As we said before, we want to put some random value to the parameters. Then, for example, we can say that the parameter A will get some random string, right? Something like, I don't know, random, a random string of characters, okay? For example, of 10 characters. Why not? Something like this, right? Oops, I miss one. Of course, here it's my mistake. And the parameter B, let's do exactly the same, but instead of 10, I don't know. Let's make the string will have 6 characters to say something. Okay. Based on all the explanation that we gave in the past about our API, in order, or if you are testing it using our UI, you know that the first thing that you need to do is update the request with the parameter values. How we do that from code perspective? Pretty simple. We are getting in our function this inside the self a client, an API client, which already has authentication to operate inside the account. In order to update it, then I need to use the client, where I need to update in the request collection our request, which has certain ID, right? Then we updated it. And what we want to do? Well, based on the object, we want to do the asset, the update the parameters, that the one that has an ID of parameter A gets as value the parameter A, and the same for the parameter B, right? Okay, now, thanks to that, we already got the put in the requests passing the right data. And now the last thing, which will be approve the request, right? Then, in order to approve the request, what we must do? It's a post into the request ID / approve, passing the template ID. Now I will hardcode the template ID, and if you want later, we can pass it to environment variable. How I will do that? Okay, I will go and I will update in the request with the ID, where we are calling the approve method, and this one we need to pass something like, if I don't remember wrong, please forgive me if I fail because I'm doing it by memory, the template ID and the value of the of such a template ID here. Sorry, because that's a dictionary. Okay, just to make it a little bit more readable. And the value of this template ID, well, I have no other option than going here in embedding templates, and it will be this one. Then I take its ID and put it directly into the code. Okay, with these few lines of code, now we have an extension that will update the parameters and it will approve the request. Then, if I did not done any mistake, let's try it. I will be starting the extension on the game. Okay, it's connected to our platform. We can go to the UI. And well, yeah, we can go to the DevOps module just to see that it's connected really. That's okay. In fact, we can do it faster clicking directly on the product name. And here, let's launch a preview. I press launch preview. That's our typical wizard. I can only select vendor, internal testing for some of the marketplaces that they have from our customers. Next, 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 some customer who will receive such a subscription. For example, this one. Next, the items based on our product definition. For example, one unit of this item. Some external ID of this subscription, the parameters. This product does not have ordering parameters, but yes, of fulfillment, and I can press create. Okay, here we get the request. We can click on the request, which loads. It got pending, and that means that I have an exception in my code, as you can see. Okay, it's complaining that some parameters are duplicated. Then we can see that here I did a really easy mistake of copy paste that I put the same value, right? And that does not make sense. Well, since I started the full service, I need to stop at it and start it again.
Will it pick up the request from the queue, or we will need to recreate the request immediately in this case?
No, it will pick up, but based on an operational process. In fact, if we go to the DevOps, we see, in fact, I will show it even that already happened because that gone pretty fast. And I press open. Here we have the task queue, and it will be rescheduling. In the case that my code break completely, it will be failed, and I can retry it, the operation. Okay. And if it gets rescheduled or I do something, it will take a few seconds in order to pick up and send it to my code.
So the module basically works through this queue of tasks, and as long as the task is not gone from the queue, it will try to redo the operation again and again. Okay.
Exactly. Okay. I'm saying that it gone really, really fast just because if we go to fulfillment and we take the one that we created, that was this one for our product, Monster as a Service, we can see that it got approved. And if we go to parameters, we can see that it got populated. The parameter A with a random string of 10 characters and the parameter B, random string of 6 characters. Then, as you see, we have a working example.
That's awesome. Yeah, so basically now we have a code that essentially automatically detects things in the queue and approves the request to automate the provisioning. And if we wanted to run it like not on our local machine, but to run it in the environment operated by our platform, Marc, obviously we don't want to show it right now, but what would be conceptually the steps in order to achieve that?
Pretty simple. I will need to put the code available into a Git repository that it's visible by Connect platform. Visible, it means that we can reach it. It may be under a concrete username and password. This means that no need that it's available to everybody. Then we will need to go to the DevOps module and switch the mode of operation. In the switching of the mode of operation, I will press the edit button. I will need to say that it shifts to the cloud. I will need to expose where is the Git repository. It, as I mentioned, it can be authenticated or not. Select the exact tag that the code, that the extension should run. With that, I can even have a version control in regards of release cycle, etc. I will press store, and then the platform will start running this code on your behalf.
Awesome. Sounds pretty straightforward then. Thank you, Marc. Thank you. I think it's actually a very cool way to automate your actions in the platform. I guess next time we might cover it in more details. It's been already almost an hour of the conversation. I think it's more than enough. So for those of you guys who stayed with us all this time, thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and well, let us know if it was helpful or not, and if you want to see more videos of this format in the future. Thank you for joining me, Marc, in this recording. It was quite cool, and well, goodbye to everyone, and see you next time.
See you.